So this is Artisan Woodshed. I'm Barry. Along with my wife, we make edge grain and end grain cutting boards as well as charcuterie boards. We do a lot of river tables, a lot of presentation pieces and everything that are made with resin. So, and pretty much any special project that comes our way, we're not afraid to dive into it. We'll dive into it. So part of this channel, the reason it's here, hey, I'm promoting the business. Hey, got to give a guy a break for that. And then secondary, the things that I've learned and I experienced along the way, that's what we're also going to talk about on this channel. And today, we're going to talk about the router table that I recently put together with on my Harvey table saw right here behind me, and we're going to talk about that. Up until this point, I'd been using just a generic, less than $150 Bosch router table that quite frankly had served me well. But the one thing, my Bosch router, I absolutely love it. It does great. I think it's a 617 EVS or 1617 CVS, something along those lines. So EVS 1617, something like that. It's a great router, but the base for it is absolutely terrible. The adjustment for going up and down when it's in the mounted in the router table, it's just constantly breaking. I've replaced it 3 times and I said enough is enough. I need to invest in a higher quality router table. I have a long-term goal. What you're going to see behind me is a short-term goal. So let's get into the nitty-gritty about what I did to make this, how I put it in my table saw, and then ultimately what I think about it after it's done. So let's get to that. So the table I decided to install, the router tabletop, I decided to install in my Harvey table saw. Probably got about 4 months ago. Love this table saw. But outside of that, this was a great location for it because it was a space that didn't get used a lot, kind of a catch-all most of the part, because I don't do a lot of sheet goods here. And when I do, I just use my track saw for that. It's just easier than trying to wield it in this shop and everything with everything here. So anyway, so the bottom line is I decided to replace that. So ultimately, the thing I had to really evaluate when choosing the dimensions for my tabletop were obviously, it needed to fit the area that it was coming out of, right? That's obvious, that's a given. I needed to do the location of my T-tracks, get that sorted out. And ultimately that becomes a bigger issue that you have to concern yourself that we'll talk about later on when we get to the fence. But ultimately I figured out the T-tracks and everything where I was going to put those in there. And then also my dust collection, which we're also going to talk about. And so what you have here is basically 2 pieces of 3/4 MDF sandwiched together and glued and sandwiched together. And so after that, I had to, because this sits in here on lips on either side of it, so ultimately the underlying piece is a couple inches dimension-wise all the way around, smaller than the tabletop, simply because I needed to clear the lips and everything that are underneath here, where you screw this in from the bottom. Okay, if I get my words right. So ultimately I got the tabletop there. Now the reason you really have to have 2 pieces of MDF or 2 pieces of 3/4, whether you use MDF or something else, that's up to you. But you got to have 1.5 inches. And the reason for that is you're going to go down here quite a bit for your T-track, right? And so you want to have some supporting table underneath of it. More importantly, once you route out the router lift and you drop that in there, you need that to have a solid area to rest on so it's perfectly secure because it's going to be a lot of vibration, obviously, and you don't want that to kind of fall through that weak MDF on the other side. So make sure you're considering those things when thinking about your tabletop. Now, you may say, well, Barry, doesn't all this get in the way on your table saw? No, not really. You can just take the fence off, pull that off. That's the advantage of the T-track. Set that off to the side, and then lower the bit on the router table to where it's below the surface. And then, of course, my table saw fence will just go across it as it always would. So I haven't really lost anything, but I've gained a great place for this because I already have duct work and everything going to this area. So I get my dust collection right for this. And like I said before, we're going to talk about dust collection in just a minute. So really think through how you're going to do your top and where you need to drill holes to secure things. A lot of things you really need to think through. On mine, you'll see where I made a few errors in my routing. My piece of wood moved on me and I ended up routing out beyond where I was trying to. It doesn't affect the performance or anything. It's just a cosmetic thing. But this is a temporary fix for me. I'll probably use this maybe for about 6 months, maybe a little bit longer. But later on, I want to replace this with the cast iron version of their tabletop that works specifically for this table saw. And then ultimately, that's the Harvey table saw that's cast iron. I want to get that in there because I really love that, and I want to get their fence. Now, that's pricey. Go look it up. A lot of dinero, baby. All right, so let's go on to the next topic. The fence is super important. And one of the challenges that I didn't realize when I did this, because this is the first one that I've ever made. Before this, I'd been using just a generic Bosch router table that had done a fairly good job, but it started to show its limitations. And so ultimately, deciding the fence, because the problem is these handles here that secure the fence where you can move it right back and forth, and you just tighten those down in the T-tracks, is the spacing of these where you can tighten these down. So ultimately, I probably put my T-tracks in there too wide because I really wanted to get, as a temporary basis, the Rockler Pro router table fence. It just had a ton of features that I felt like I could live with for a while until I could afford to shell out the cash for the Harvey one. It's like $800, crazy, I know. But the Rockler one was $200. So that was actually on sale because it was around the holidays. But ultimately, the placement of the grooves here to be able to put these in the T-tracks, they were further in, so I could have never used that. I found this one on Amazon, and I think it is, I want to think I paid $119 for it. Pretty good deal. It's all, machined aluminum. Does a really good job. It's got a T-track on the top, and then ultimately, you got these little stop blocks, and one of them comes with it. The other one I had stop blocks and everything on it. It has the built-in dust collection port on the back, which is absolutely vital because these things produce a ton of dust, and we'll talk about that with the dust collection. You also have a T-tracks along the front here. So if you needed to do, let's pull these over here, your typical attachments, right? Your feather board and that kind of stuff. You could put those in there, although I don't tend to use either one of those. But ultimately, so far, now I've only had this done now for maybe a week, and I've used it a ton. And so far it has worked flawlessly for me. And so I guess I would give this positive reviews as of today. For $120, you can't beat it. All right, here we go. Your router lift. Now, there's a lot of choices out there, and there's a lot of options. I have always been, for the most part, as long as I can swing it, buy once, cry once kind of guy. I'm not somebody who wants to turn around and buy something and 2 years later have to replace it because it no longer services all of my needs, because as my knowledge increases and my experience increases, and once I learn more and more about these things and all the things that I can do, I'm going to demand more from the router lift. A router lift is very important. Some of the key features, hang on just a second, let me grab this down here, pull that out. Some of the key features of this, you have this magnetic piece to pull this bit guard over here that for some reason just isn't always fitting perfect, but is what it is. It's got magnetic on there. And then you've got the router bit there. Now as an example, hopefully you can see this from back over there. But here, there's a lock over here where once it's locked, it cannot move. It cannot be raised up or down. So I just unlocked that. And then I've got this lift right here. And here I can just raise that up and then ultimately get to be able to change that router bit without having to get underneath, because I can come up further, but I can get access to that router bit right there pretty easily and change that bit out quickly. Right, and so like I said before, I can lower it down to where it is below the line here. Let's take and go all the way down with that. And you can see in there, this thing is shifting on me slightly. One is I still have to secure these pieces on the side that lock it underneath. I hadn't done that yet. It hasn't really been an issue so far, but I've got everything I need to do that. But now it's down below, then I can just put this back on there and, oh, well, this is in my way. Put that back on there, turn it, over and done, get that out of the way. And so now I can remove this and go anywhere I want to with it. So I ultimately settled on the Jessom router lift. They've got different levels. This is their most expensive one. I think it was a little bit less than $400. And it based upon all my reviews, all the reviews I watched and all the data that I could collect, this really was my best choice. Your key players out there are going to be, of course, JESSM. It's going to be Craig. It's going to be Rockler. All of those make great router lifts. And so, there's obviously other choices out there that you can choose from, but, Woodpecker, now get your money out for that Woodpecker place because it's dinero, but they make good stuff. But ultimately, I went with the JESSM, and I've been very happy with it so far. It has served me very, very, very well. And so I can't recommend this enough, but you'll find a gazillion people out there recommending this router lift like crazy out there on the World Wide Web. That's right, dust collection. Super freaking important. Let me tell you, the things that produce a lot of dust are your planer, your jointer, and your router table, especially depending on what you're doing with it. And so you got to attack a router table from the bottom, and you got to attack it from the top. Otherwise, you're going to have to be wearing a mask the whole time, and you're going to get loose, fine dust everywhere. So to try and do this without this is, not recommended, okay? So like I said, this has got it going in. I just cut a hole over here, a 3-inch hole over here to the top of the table, and that goes down through there and connects down below. So I'm going to go grab my cell phone. We're going to go in. It'll be easier for me to get under there, and you can see the dust collection cabinet that is installed underneath of the unit. All right, so here you're going to see the dust collection cabinet that you can buy from Harvey Tools. Now, quite a few people make dust collection cabinets out there, so there's plenty of options out there. But you can see where they secure in right there all the way around. I still have 2 screws I'm missing from up top, but Ace was out of them, so I'll deal with that this weekend. And so you've got that there. Now, as far as ports are concerned, let me try to get down here. This is a little bit hard to do for this old man. But you can see here where the 4-inch port is coming in here, and then the 2.5-inch port is coming out of there. This one is going up to the top behind the fence. And so that's what's happening there. And so that's important. Now here, of course, we've got the access cabinet, so we can just pull this open. And inside here, you can see the router lift and everything in there and how that works. So if you needed to get in there to do something, you can just locate that that little door and get in there and do what you got to do. I've yet to have to do anything to it yet, but anyway, so that's the dust collection. Again, there's plenty of options out there for dust collection. Now, I will tell you, if you have dust collection run to your shop, you want to make sure that you have blast gates to be able to shut the airflow on and off like that. This one there is what's going to the router table, and this one here is going back to the table saw. Now, I recently did a video on how I did my whole shop for dust collection. You should go check that out. As you can see kind of that around through here. I'll give you a quick glimpse. You can go back and watch that video where I really talk about this in greater depth and everything. And you can kind of see how that's wired throughout the shop. The shop's a mess right now because I've been working all this dust collection. So everything got put on pause for the last week during Christmas so I could come out here and get all of this run. So anyway, so this is my router table. Love it, hate it, but it works great. Understand that if you're going to go into this, if you're worried, do you have the skill set to do it? You do. It's easy. And if you screw up, it's not the end of the world. You got to learn sometime, so get in there and give it a try. So I hope you found this video enjoyable. Hope you learned something along the way, at least got a few ideas for your shop. If you want to jump into this, I strongly encourage you to jump in the water. The water is fine. One question I have for all you folks out there is I'm kind of curious. I live in Central Florida, and we don't get to wear jeans or long sleeve shirts maybe 10 days out of the year, this being one of them. And today's kind of borderline, to be honest with you. And so I haven't worn this since 2 years ago because last year we had a really warm winter. And let me tell you, my gut is busting out of this shirt. I mean, busted out. I've gotten fat. So anyway, comes with getting old. So leave me some comments down below. Tell me what you think about how fat I've gotten, or tell me what you think about the router table. Don't worry about hurting my feelings. Just dive in there. I got another YouTube channel I've been doing for a couple years related to home recording studios. Check that out, Studio Talk with Barry Johns on YouTube. If you happen to be a musician, go check that one out. That gets a lot more activity than this one so far because I'm just getting this one off the ground. So anyway, leave me some comments down below. Tell me what you think. And until next time, I hope every one of you have a great day. And whatever you do, learn something every day and never make the mistake of making a mistake and not learning from it. Until next time, see ya.